Usually when you hear that a city has dispatched a landscaping crew to clear out an overgrown municipal park, you have a very specific, like almost cinematic image in your head.
Oh, totally. You expect to hear the rumble of heavy diesel trucks pulling up to the curb.
Right. You expect to see these crews of workers sweating in full-body hazmat suits, hauling these massive gas-powered brush cutters around.
Yeah, they're basically bringing an arsenal of heavy machinery to wage war on the underbrush.
Exactly. You expect a whole lot of noise, a whole lot of exhaust, and just this very clear, hard boundary between human engineering and untamed nature.
It's a highly mechanized, highly industrialized approach to dealing with the natural world. I mean, it's the brute force method of urban maintenance that we have all just come to accept as the normal background noise of city living.
Yeah.
When the city has a weed problem, they send in the engines and the chemicals.
But on June 24th, 2026, the Borough of LaSalle in Greater Montreal, they decided to just flip that entire expectation on its head.
They really did.
They had a serious invasive plant problem at Parc de l'Aqueduc, but they didn't deploy a traditional landscaping crew. They deployed a squad of 15 goats.
A highly specialized caprine squad, to be exact.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We're pulling from some incredibly detailed recent publications originating from wikiresidents.ca and infodrone.ca. And let me tell you, when I first saw the headline about city goats, my immediate thought was, oh, this is just a cute feel-good story about farm animals visiting the city.
Right, like a petting zoo or something.
Exactly. But as we look at the data, it becomes super clear that this is so much bigger than a temporary petting zoo at the local park.
It absolutely is. And our mission today is to look at the actual mechanics behind this decision. We want to explore how substituting fossil fuels with living biomass is fundamentally redefining the financial, ecological, and social balance of urban maintenance.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, because this isn't just a quirky local news story. It is a calculated shift in how cities are managing their assets. And it's a shift that directly impacts the future of the cities you live in.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we have to start with the actual mechanics of why an urban planner would look at a municipal budget and decide to hire livestock instead of buying lawnmowers.
Right.
Let's look closely at the pilot project in LaSalle. This was part of their 2025 to 2030 local ecological transition plan. The borough mandated an organization called Firm KAC to target a 200 square meter test area in Parc de l'Aqueduc.
Yes.
And they specifically chose goats, not sheep, goats. Why the distinction there?
Well, that distinction is crucial, actually, and it's based on a very strict agronomic calculation. Because if you bring in sheep, you are bringing in grazers.
Okay.
They're going to focus almost entirely on the herbaceous layer. Essentially, they just eat the grass on the ground. But goats are browsers.
Browsers.
Yeah, they eat leaves, twigs, vines, and shrubs. The sources actually describe goats as vertical brush cutters.
Which is such a great image, but how does that actually help with a toxic weed problem?
What's really fascinating here is the underlying biology. According to Melanie Couture, she's the representative for Ferme Pace, the goats are uniquely equipped for this kind of demolition.
Why is that?
Because their digestive system is fundamentally different from ours and different from sheep. They can consume and completely neutralize stubborn, highly toxic plants.
Like what kind of plants?
We're talking about things like poison ivy and buckthorn. These are plants containing oils that cause severe, blistering allergic reactions in humans. But the goats, they eat them with absolutely zero adverse effects on their health.
So they aren't just natural lawnmowers. It's like, they're nature's Roomba, but specifically designed for toxic waste.
That is a great analogy.
Because they don't just cut the plant down, their stomachs literally burn away the plant's toxic oils and destroy the seeds so they can never grow again.
Precisely. I mean, we spend millions of dollars engineering chemical herbicides and mechanical shredders to destroy these invasive root systems. And it turns out millions of years of caprine evolution has already perfected the technology.
Wow.
The enzymes in a goat's digestive tract dismantle the chemical defenses of the plant. They cook the seeds during digestion, so they aren't just moving the weeds around or pooping out new weed seeds. They are actively removing the threat from the ecosystem.
I have to admit, the mechanics of that are just incredible. And the immediate horticultural benefits are obvious, right?
Oh, absolutely.
For the residents living near Parc de l'Aqueduc, you have instant site decarbonization because there are no gas engines running, aside from, the initial truck ride to drop the animals off.
Right.
And you have the total elimination of noise pollution. The local bird life isn't disturbed.
Not to mention, you're completely eliminating the risk of chemical runoff into the local water table because you aren't spraying synthetic herbicides all over the place.
Great, but I do have to push back a little bit here.
Okay, sure.
I look at this 200 square meter test patch in LaSalle, and part of me just sees a PR dream. I mean, it looks great on camera. The local residents get to take photos of goats eating poison ivy for Instagram.
Sure, it's very photogenic.
Right. But come on, 15 goats. To clear a whole overgrown, contaminated park. If this takes all summer and they have to keep bringing them back, how is this not just a massive waste of city time compared to a guy with a commercial weed whacker who can clear it in a few hours?
That is exactly the right question to ask, and the experts involved are very transparent about this reality. Melanie Couture points out that biological horticulture requires recurrence.
Recurrence, meaning they have to come back.
Right. A single rotation is not a magic bullet. If they just drop the goats off once and take them home a week later, the plants will simply regrow from their established deep root systems.
So it's not a quick fix at all.
No, it is a war of attrition. To actually be effective, there have to be successive grazing passes throughout the late summer. The goats have to repeatedly defoliate the toxic plants.
Okay, I think I see where this is going.
Yeah, think about how a plant survives. It uses its leaves as solar panels to feed its roots. Every time the plant tries to use its stored energy in the roots to grow new leaves, the goats come through and eat them again.
Oh.
Eventually, you completely exhaust the root systems of the targeted invasive plants. They just run out of energy and die. And only after that sustained, recurring pressure can the borough actually evaluate if the project was a success and whether to renew it.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the moment you tell me that a municipal government has to keep sending these goats back to the exact same park over and over again all summer long, my brain immediately goes to the budget.
Naturally.
If this requires multiple successive passes, how can this possibly make economic sense for a city? We have to look at the OpEx, right?
The operating expenditures, yes.
Right, because think about your own property taxes.
Mm.
When your city has to clear a toxic park, you are the one footing the bill.
Yes, and for any public infrastructure manager or real estate analyst, the bucolic imagery of goats in a park doesn't matter if the spreadsheet doesn't balance. They have to evaluate eco-grazing strictly through the lens of operating expenditures and the avoidance of environmental liabilities.
So let's break down that spreadsheet, because the contrast between the two methods is wild. What does the traditional model, like the mechanical and chemical approach, what does that actually cost a city?
Historically, when a city has to clear a surface colonized by hazardous plants like poison ivy, it costs between $12 and $18 per square meter.
$12 to $18 per square meter. That adds up incredibly fast for a massive municipal park. Why is it so expensive?
Well, consider the logistics chain driving that cost. It requires highly specialized human intervention. You're paying union or contractor rates for crews.
Right.
You have to supply them with full personal protective equipment, hazmat suits, heavy gloves, respirators. You're paying for the operation, fuel, and maintenance of motorized cutting gear.
Which isn't cheap.
Exactly. And here is the biggest cost driver. Because the plant material is highly toxic to humans, you can't just leave the cut plants on the ground to compost. You can't throw them in a regular city yard waste bin.
Because then the sanitation workers get exposed to the poison ivy.
Exactly. It requires hermetic bagging. The workers have to carefully seal all that toxic vegetation into airtight bags. And then the city has to pay specialized transport trucks to haul those bags to an expensive, specialized landfill site that accepts contaminated biological waste.
Jeez.
Every single link in that chain costs money.
Okay, so compare that to the biological model, the eco-grazing. What are the sources saying that costs?
According to Quebec municipal benchmarks, the cost of a full seasonal cycle of pastoral service, meaning the goats coming back again and again all summer to exhaust those roots, is between $8 and $11 per square meter.
Wait, $8 to $11 for the whole season?
Yes.
What does that actually include?
That covers everything. It includes renting the mobile fencing to keep the goats contained, the liability insurance, transporting the animals back and forth from the farm, and paying the breeder to physically monitor the herd while they're in the city.
So if we look at the LaSalle pilot project specifically, how much did the city actually spend?
The LaSalle pilot required a total upfront investment of between $4,500 and $6,000.
That seems remarkably low for an entire season of park maintenance.
This raises an important question for urban planners who are facing massive infrastructure deficits. How is it that cheap?
Yeah, how?
That upfront cost is almost entirely offset by a single factor: the complete elimination of the logistical costs of exporting green waste off-site.
Because they don't have to bag up the poison ivy and drive it to a landfill. The goats literally digested the liability.
Exactly.
They turned a toxic waste management problem into goat fuel.
But here's the catch with that math. You aren't just comparing the hourly rate of a goat to a human contractor. You're looking at systemic efficiency. The biological model entirely bypasses the traditional waste management logistic.
Because there's no waste to manage.
Right. You aren't generating contaminated green waste, so you don't have to pay to transport it, and you don't have to pay to bury it. It's a completely closed-loop system.
That is brilliant. The biological model is ecologically cleaner. It completely removes the noise pollution. It keeps humans away from toxic plants. And D, it's economically superior because it destroys the waste on site.
It checks every box.
Okay, so if the math works this well for poison ivy in LaSalle, it begs the question, are other parts of Greater Montreal scaling this up? Like, goats are great for toxic underbrush, but what if a city's problem isn't poison ivy? What if the problem is just massive, endless tracts of grass under power lines that are prone to soil erosion?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is exactly the paradigm shift we're witnessing across the metropolis.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Different administrations are integrating farm animals into their asset maintenance strategies, but they're deploying them based on the specific biological traits of the animal. To answer your question about the power lines, let's look at Hydro-Quebec on the South Shore.
Right. The sources mention they are utilizing Montérégie sheep producers in the high-tension power line corridors in Brossard and Longueuil.
Yes. Hydro-Quebec is allocating a total budget of roughly $45,000 per site, running from May all the way to October. But they aren't using goats. They're using sheep.
Okay.
And they are doing this to completely replace phyticides, which are heavy chemical weed killers, underneath these massive power lines.
But why sheep instead of goats for the power lines?
Because the environmental challenge is different. Under power lines, you have large, flat areas of soft soil that are highly prone to erosion if the vegetation isn't managed perfectly.
Ah, okay.
Sheep are grazers. When a sheep bites the top off a blade of grass, it triggers a survival mechanism in the plant. The grass essentially panics and sends its root system much deeper into the soil to seek out more nutrients and water to regrow.
So by constantly having their tops nibbled off, the grass roots weave together deeper underground, which physically stabilizes the soft soil and prevents erosion.
Precisely. Add to that the fact that sheep are relatively lightweight, so their hooves gently aerate the soil without compacting it like heavy diesel tractors would. It's the perfect biological tool for that specific landscape.
Okay, so sheep are your precision mowers and soil stabilizers. But what if a city is dealing with really tough, dangerous terrain? Say, a rocky shoreline infested with something even worse than poison ivy.
Then you look at what the city of Laval is doing. They established a $22,000 budget for July and August, doing 10-day rotations at Berge-des-Beigneurs and Bois-de-la-Querre.
Nice.
They partnered with the firm Ecological de LaSalle, and for this specific challenge, they brought the goats back.
What are the goats targeting in Laval?
They are targeting two highly invasive plants, phragmites and giant hogweed. Giant hogweed is incredibly dangerous. Its sap is phototoxic.
Phototoxic.
Yeah. If a human gets that sap on their skin and then steps into the sunlight, it causes severe, blistering third-degree burns.
And Laval has this growing along their shorelines. That's a nightmare. If you send human crews in there, you have guys in heavy hazmat suits trying to navigate slippery, rocky riverbanks carrying gas-powered saws.
Which is incredibly dangerous for the workers. And bringing heavy machinery down to the water would destroy the fragile riverbanks.
Right.
But goats are naturally agile climbers.
Right.
They can navigate that difficult shoreline terrain effortlessly. And, just like with the poison ivy, the goats are completely immune to the giant hogweed sap. They just eat it.
It really is like a specialized toolkit. You pull out the sheep for your basic lawn mowing and erosion control, but when you have a shoreline infested with dangerous, skin-burning giant hogweed, you call in the heavy-duty goat squad.
Exactly.
What about just a normal, everyday city park? Do we have data on that?
We do. In the borough of Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie, they are running a project in Parc du Pelican. They have a $35,000 annual budget, partnering with a nonprofit called Greater Montreal.
Okay, and what's the strategy there?
They use sheep there. And their target impact is different. The sheep in Parc are there for basic grass control, yes, but primarily for community engagement. Because sheep are docile grazers, they are perfectly suited for maintaining standard park lawns where children are playing nearby.
Which brings us to the most surprising layer of this entire deep dive. We've covered the financial savings, we've covered the fascinating ecological mechanics of goats' stomachs and sheep grazing, but the sources reveal a third layer of impact that fundamentally changes the culture of the neighborhoods surrounding these grazing sites.
You were talking about the social externalities.
Exactly. The sources call it the civic magnet effect. When a city introduces livestock into the urban fabric, it completely alters human behavior in that space. Attendance logs at these pioneer sites prove that eco-grazing acts as a massive, localized foot traffic generator.
The data points are striking. Average visitor dwell time, which is just the amount of time a resident actually spends lingering in the park, increases by 15 to 40 minutes on average.
Think about what that means for a neighborhood. A technical maintenance corridor, a place people used to just put their headphones on and walk quickly through to get to the bus stop, spontaneously transforms into an intergenerational gathering space.
It really does.
People stop, they take off their headphones, they point out the animals to their kids. Neighbors who have lived next to each other for years without speaking suddenly strike up a conversation over a fence while watching a goat eat weeds.
And because of that lingering, you get this massive secondary benefit, a drastic reduction in petty crime and vandalism. The sources tie this directly to the urban planning principle of natural surveillance. The concept is often called eyes on the park.
Basically, criminals and vandals don't like an audience.
It's a well-documented sociological phenomenon. When a space feels abandoned or is only frequented by noisy landscaping crews, it invites vandalism and illegal dumping. But when you have shepherds, local facilitators, and families constantly gathered around these enclosures, the space feels watched and cared for. The presence of the community itself acts as a deterrent.
The numbers are wild. During the grazing periods, within a 100-meter radius of the animals, petty crime, vandalism of park benches, and illegal dumping dropped by over 60%. 60%?
That's a huge drop.
It's like the city hired a landscaper to eat the poison ivy, but accidentally got a free neighborhood watch program and a daily block party thrown in.
And that leads directly into the final and perhaps most unexpected metric discussed in the sources, the hedonic property value.
Okay, hedonic property value. What does that actually mean in plain English for the people living across the street from these parks?
We're talking about how environmental and aesthetic perks like peace and quiet or a lack of chemical pesticides literally increase the financial value of a home. It means a tangible increase in a resident's quality of life, which translates directly to real estate dynamics.
So how does a goat increase my property value?
Think about the baseline acoustic environment of your summer. If you live in a residential sector adjacent to Parc de l'Aqueduc, your summer used to be punctuated by the high-pitched, deafening whine of municipal brush cutters.
Ugh, yeah, the worst.
You couldn't sit on your patio and read a book. Now, that noise pollution has been completely substituted with the quietude of pastoral activity.
You hear the faint sound of sheep grazing instead of the roar of chainsaws.
Precisely. And the real estate market is becoming incredibly sensitive to how green and shady the streets are and how quiet the neighborhoods remain.
That makes total sense.
The sources highlight that living in a neighborhood that is explicitly managed without pesticides is steadily taking root as a major reason families decide not to move away. People want to live and invest their lives in neighborhoods that manage their environment quietly, safely, and biologically.
So what does this all mean? To bring it all together, we started this deep dive looking at a very specific, almost funny incident. 15 goats deployed to eat a patch of poison ivy in a park in LaSalle.
Right.
But what we've actually uncovered is a massive region-wide shift in how cities in Greater Montreal are balancing their budgets, their environments, and their communities.
The overarching thesis of these sources is profound. Municipalities everywhere are grappling with colossal infrastructure maintenance budgets that they simply cannot afford.
Yeah.
The traditional heavy technology solutions, the trucks, the hazmat suits, the chemical sprays, the specialized landfills, they're becoming too expensive, too noisy, and too ecologically damaging to sustain. The LaSalle experiment and the wider metropolitan network it is part of proves a fundamental economic truth about the future of our cities. The resilient city of tomorrow will not rely solely on heavy machinery. Success will depend on the ability of urban planners to intelligently subcontract hard labor back to nature itself.
It is a complete reimagining of what a city can be. Instead of fighting nature with machines, we are partnering with nature's own mechanisms to do the heavy lifting.
And for you listening, I think this changes how you experience your own neighborhood. The next time you are sitting in your local park, enjoying a beautiful afternoon, and that peace is shattered by the deafening whine of a gas-powered weed whacker and the smell of exhaust, well, you might just find yourself looking at all those weeds and wishing your city would send in a herd of sheep instead.
It really makes you wonder if our cities can successfully outsource hazardous weed control, neighborhood noise reduction, and community building to a squad of goats and sheep. What else is on the table? What other massive, expensive civic infrastructures like our water filtration systems, our street cleaning protocols, or even our urban pest control could we eventually hand back to living ecosystems instead of relying on loud, expensive machines? Because right now in Montreal, when you expect a crew in hazmat suits with brush cutters, sometimes the most advanced technology the city can deploy is just an animal eating its lunch.